Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton Curry and Big C, the Charlton Big C Show, the $1 Million program. We coming to you worldwide every Monday through Friday in the 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock hour p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I want to thank everyone for listening in and appreciate you very much. And Big C, as we always start off, we love talking about the sports world. And ironically, we look at what's happened over the past week. Since past Sunday, we launched our show on the 29th of February for leap year. And we had just come off the Oscars with Chris Rock talking about things that, quite frankly, some people are not very confident or comfortable talking about, and that's the race issue. But, you and I were just talking yesterday. We talked about politics and how it relates to sports. Well, we know that Donald Trump's owns a golf course down in Florida, Doral. They're playing this weekend, sponsored by Cadillac. Well, in the debate last night against Marco Rubio, he talked about the size of his package. Now, ironically, we talked about how Tiger Woods was chastised for the alleged affairs and et cetera, which a lot of people do. But here's a guy, and there's hardly any pushback from the sporting community. If this golf course was owned by President Obama or even a Tiger Woods, don't you think there'd be more uproar about that, Big C? What are your thoughts on that?
There would be racial protesting all over. You'd have people outside the course picketing, about that type of language being used from a political leader. But, it's Donald Trump. And as we've talked about, Donald Trump appeals to the good old boy. Donald Trump uses the analogy, we're going to take America back. He's appealing to those people that look back 50 years ago during Jim Crow, prior to desegregation, when you could say and do anything you want. You could use any type of racial epithet, and there was never any backlash. And that's the reason why Donald Trump uses the racial epithets all the time. He is being racial. When he sits there and say Mexicans, what else race does he talk about? And like I said, who's the groundskeepers down at Doral?
Yeah.
He's not saying who's the groundskeeper, but I guarantee you they're not some college grad out there sweeping sand and cutting grass with Donald Trump and trimming hedges.
Well, as we talked about,
you have to look at the ethnicity of those people.
Yes, and as we talked about that as well, Big C. Now, the Golf Channel is owned not by Middle America. This is a corporate television outlet. This is just like someone like Ted Turner owning CNN. Now, I know this sometimes is this good old boy network out there, but I think it's such a big deal. And I just could imagine if any athlete was talking about the size of their package, and I guarantee you is big, that would not be brushed under the carpet. And why are even the sports anchors unafraid to talk about? It's a great golf tournament. We talked about 3 of the top guys that have won 4 of the last major events with McIlroy and Spieth, and then also Day. They're down there. Also, Phil Mickelson's there. But there's no pushback, and I know Cadillac is a sponsor. And you talked about the irony all the time. I just think it's so ironic that it's like hush, hush. No one even chastises these opinions or even comes out to say we have nothing to do with that.
Well, it will all come out in the political arena with Donald Trump. It will shake out. Donald Trump may be winning the populist vote.
Yeah.
But you have to get down to the electoral college. That's who will put the president in the White House. Now, there's too many old established Republicans that are in fear of Donald Trump being in the White House. Donald Trump hasn't laid out his platform. He has talked loud. He's carried a small stick. And
no pun intended.
He has no platform that's going to lead the world's greatest superpower. And so that's the fear. I mean, you can talk rhetoric all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to have some foundation periodically. And Donald Trump hasn't put that forth. He's like a snake oil salesman. He'll come in and tell you what it will all cure. This one bottle of elixir.
I was talking to a former NFL player just today on the phone, and he played with the 49ers, and I won't mention his name, but we were talking about how people like ESPN, they're not talking about it. Sports Center's they're like dropping it. It's like they're afraid to say anything, and that's a shame because unlike us, we're just real talk. Like we talk at Charlton and Big C, real talk. And you have the Masters coming up, which is the granddaddy of them all for the major golfers. That's where that's like the Rose Bowl. The Masters is like the Super Bowl for the majors. So leading up to it, and again, these are the same good old boys that chastised Tiger. Of all the golfers and all their private planes and all their wives and girlfriends, he was the only one that was held out there as some example. And they're not even saying anything. Maybe there'll be a pushback, but going into the weekend, I wonder if ESPN or ABC or even the Golf Channel will pick up on how that's not acceptable language, irrespective of him running for office, but just to be the guy who owns the golf course, and there's no pushback on talking about the size of his package with all the other things that he talks about, Big C.
Charlton, all the major networks will skirt around that. They will not touch it. They'll be like a hockey player on ice. They'll just be sliding right past it. They're not going to pay any attention to it because they don't want to be saying, hey, we're taking sides politically.
Yeah.
And that's what they're afraid of. If they say something about one politician, then the others are going to blame them about taking sides. Donald Trump is going to get a free pass on all the stuff he says. And, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
It's un-American to say a lot of the things that he says.
Yes.
This country was built on immigrants. Everybody here is an immigrant.
Yeah.
The only Native Americans are the true Native Americans, the American Indians.
Yeah.
They had this country. It was taken away from them.
Yeah.
So when people talk about we're going to take back our country, Donald Trump needs to know who the country actually belongs to.
Well,
and most likely his father was an immigrant into America, so he became a naturalized citizen. His father was not born here in America.
Well, I'll tell you, Big C, that's a very good point there. And this all ties into the sports industry because we all love sports. And I know we're in a time of politically correct times. You got to say the right thing. But I also believe, just like the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, we're in a world where people are judged by not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And it goes back into the Oscars, and Chris Rock, of all people, they put Chris Rock out there to talk about how African Americans were avoiding the Oscars. I wish they would have put maybe Julia Roberts or Meryl Streep or some other icon that they put out there, like anyone, Brad Pitt perhaps, because it takes someone from the inside to talk about it. So the way I see it and how it relates to sports is because of many of these people attend sporting events. For example, last night, Prince was at the Golden State Warriors game. At the Golden State Warriors, more photobomb than anybody. But I think it's such a beautiful sports, the entertainment industry, Hollywood, sports, it's all together, broadcast. And I'm so grateful to be a part of that. And as we get into that thing, and I just want to close out your thoughts on Chris Rock and what that means. We talked about Will Smith. We talked about Denzel Washington. So many people that are in the Hollywood industry, but they also love sports. Sam Jackson, another one. Just to wrap up your thoughts on the Oscars, what Chris Rock said, how it relates to politics and the Oscars and sports.
Well, if you really want to talk about how it relates to sports, down at the Combine, the Atlanta Falcons personnel asked a defensive back from Ohio State, was his sexual preference in men?
Yeah.
This young defensive back just happened to be African American.
Yeah.
Now, why would you ask this type of question at the Combine and you only ask it of an African American player?
Crazy.
You didn't ask it of any of the Anglo players. You didn't ask any of these top quarterbacks, Jeff Goff or Joey Bosa out of Ohio State, the defensive end.
Yeah.
You didn't ask these guys were their sexual preference in men, but you're asking African Americans. So once again, racism rears its ugly head. Let me tell you how prevalent racism is. Years ago I was sitting in California in the backyard of a friend on a golf course.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there talking. We were having some libations. And one of the gentlemen there was a highway patrol.
Yeah.
And he made this comment, and we all known each other for years.
Yes.
Is that if I'm going down the freeway and a guy passes me doing 95 miles an hour in a 750 BMW,
yeah, he
has stock wheels and untinted windows, and he's white, I'm not going to pull him over because he may be a doctor or lawyer headed to an appointment.
Yes.
But if another BMW comes along, it has 22-inch rims and tinted windows, and I see that the person in there is not Anglo, if I can see it, I'm going to pull him over and question him. Now, this came from a law enforcement officer in California, a guy that is hired to serve and protect. But he also says they're hired to profile. It's just not in writing. This is an unwritten rule of what they do.
Yes.
So when we talk about equality in America, law enforcement will tell you off the cuff that there's not. So when you see all these incidents occur of racism at the Combine, at the Oscars, at a political debate, it's America. America will never have equality. We strive for it, but it's something that will never exist.
Well, ironically, Big C, you bring me back to a point, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. And if you don't hear it on most networks, it's because people don't have the chance to do Real Talk the way we do. I'll never forget, back in about 1998, I was meeting a friend of mine over in San Francisco. We were driving over to the Oakland Coliseum to see the Raiders play another team from the AFC conference. And I'll never forget, we had a conversation. As you know, people, he happened to be a Caucasian guy. And as people become friends, sometimes you let your guard down. And now I picked him up in a BMW. And he said to me, just off the cuff, if you see a lot of black guys driving around in the BMW, you know they're up to no good. Now, here we are in a world of multi-million-dollar athletes. And for a time, I thought that he forgot that I was African-American because he said it so cavalierly.
He was sincere about it.
He was sincere about it. And I said, so what do you think about me? And he says, well, you're different. You're not like the other ones. Now,
and Charlton, that's something I've heard my entire life. You're different. How am I different? I'm an African-American man. I grew up as an African-American man, young man.
Yeah.
And I'm still an older African-American man. So how am I different? How do you judge me different than you judge somebody else? It's no different than seeing a skinhead walk down the street. How is he different from the others?
Right.
So we put personal separation in something, evaluating somebody without having knowledge of them.
And that is so true. By the way, I still see this guy on the sideline of Laker games down in Los Angeles, but it doesn't hold him back having that type of enmity toward people because most of the industry looks like him, and that's something that's real. So when Chris Rock talked about the Oscars, as a sports reporter, we experience the same thing. Oftentimes from guys that we even cover games with. And speaking of covering games, this show is sponsored today by Cadillac. Go see your local Northern California Cadillac dealer. Tell them that you heard about them from Charlton and Big C. And also, Big C, as we get into the NBA, and I know that we talk about things and our show goes so fast, but we get into the NBA. And I love watching Charles Barkley last night, and he and Shaquille O'Neal and Kennedy Smith, they were talking about the Golden State Warriors. I mean, these guys, they 55-5 right now? And
they're just setting the NBA on fire right now.
Well, you called last night. You said it would be a little bit close going down the stretch and that the Warriors would pull away. Now, there's so much talk about Durant as a great player. Even some talk that there may be a trade where he can come to the Golden State Warriors because there's going to be about $20 million for each team coming up in the next season with the salary cap going up. But what are your thoughts on Golden State? Historically, I know they haven't beaten the Bulls record, but they seem to do everything right. And Curry didn't even have a great shooting game last night, and he still scored almost 30 points.
Well, Charlton, if you look at if the Golden State Warriors have a chance of beating the Chicago Bulls record, now there's one thing that can hold them back.
Yeah.
A player that was a member of that team, who is now the coach of Golden State.
Yes.
So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr was a member of that Bulls team that won, what was it, 73 games?
Yeah, 72 games.
72 games. Now, he's coaching Golden State. Now, if there's any reason there's a hiccup and they don't break that record, I got to realistically look at Steve Kerr.
Well, remember,
not allowing his current team to break his past team's record.
Well, remember, Steve Kerr, he was looked at by Phil Jackson to come coach the Knicks, and he walked away because he had an opportunity to come out here and coach in Oakland.
Well, if you got an opportunity to coach a Cadillac versus, a Pinto, that's basically the equivalency. You had a team that already had 50 wins under its belt.
Yes.
And you were offered the keys to drive it. Just don't mess anything up. Versus going to a team with a so-called superstar with an attitude and couldn't win 30 games.
Yes.
It wasn't rocket science. And, if Steve Kerr had went to the Knicks,
yep,
it would have been a very stupid move on his behalf. You saw what happened to Derek Fisher.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
And he had played for Jackson.
Well, there definitely seems to be a coaching carousel, but I want to get your thought on this, too, because I look at how Russell Westbrook plays, and he plays with such aggression. Just seeing him last week, actually on Monday in Sacramento, playing against the Kings, he's very physical, very dominant. But I know you've talked about this in the past. In the last quarter of the game, I want to see Durant taking at least 50% of the shots. And there are times when Westbrook would come down, and because he looks like he's open, he throws up a three. When he should give that ball to Durant, he's better driving the whole Big C.
Well, Oklahoma City has gotten as good as it's going to get with that tandem of players. Westbrook needs his own team as well as Durant needs his own team. They can no longer play together after this year. One of them has to go, or both of them go their separate ways. But they can't play together in OKC because you have two players that need the ball.
Yeah.
And Westbrook is the point guard. He needs the ball.